Hi, thanks for joining us on the West London Sport YouTube channel. I'm here with former QPR striker Kevin Gallen and my West London Sport colleagues Ian McCullough and Ben Kosky after QPR's massive West London derby win over Brentford last night. Kevin, you must have been really pleased with that. I saw you did a nice little tweet after the game as well, saying how happy you were. It's obviously a massive result, probably the best of the season that QPR have had so far, and they're in great form. You know, like it was only like a month and a half ago, really, that we were talking about this team being in relegation trouble, and while they're still not out of it completely, they're certainly looking a lot more comfortable and have got some great results, especially on the road, and obviously a great result at home last night. I mean, what do you think now, given this run? What do you think QPR can actually go on and achieve this season? Where do you think they're able to finish? Do you think they're able to sort of get into the top half and make a playoff push, or is the focus really still got to be on securing their championship status for next year?
Well, I think I said it in the last 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month now. I don't think we'll go down. I wasn't sure until January. I thought we were in a tricky position, but made some good signings, especially Charlie has come in and lifted the club, and Johansson's, we always said he was a good player and how fit he'd be, but he's fitted in straight away. The change of formation has suited everyone. Look a lot stronger. Like in both boxes, where before I always thought we dominated possession at times, but we were always a little bit weak defending our box, and we weren't putting our chances away when we had the ball, good chances in the opposition's box. I don't think we'll go down. It's a great result last night. Ooh, really good. I know you said, I think last week, Dan said that we were saying that Watford was the result of the season. Well, yesterday was now the result of the season. Let's see how far we can go. Regarding the playoffs, maybe too far ahead, but if I was the management team, we will just be looking towards Saturday against Bournemouth and picking up a good result. And I think if you start getting ahead of yourselves and thinking about this, that and the other, instead of just taking one game at a time, and I know it's a cliche, but you have to be like that, especially as a player. Start looking ahead. You don't really too far ahead. It don't really work. You've got to just think about the players will now be recovery session at the club today, then maybe a little bit more recovery on Friday, and go again on Friday against another good team in Bournemouth who just got relegated. So just concentrate on the next game and move forward.
Yeah, I think like mid-table, really, if they can get up to there, would probably be a success this season, given like where they were over Christmas and in the new year, before they started to pick up. I think that would probably be a big success. I mean, yeah, playoffs, I sort of tweeted out yesterday as a bit of a joke, really. They're still quite a way off that. And I think given how they, the terrible run of form they were on before they picked up, I think that would be a big stretch. But I mean, Ian, what do you think about QPR the rest of this season? I mean, obviously are looking a lot more positive now. Where do you think they can finish? And I mean, like Kev said, that result yesterday is the biggest shot of the season, and this is sort of result that can really like spur a team on as well, can't it?
I think I said last week, you look to finish above where you finished last year. If they can finish top 8, top 10, and then, that's progress. And then you kind of, mentally sort of look ahead towards the next season and what you can do. But then, in the short term, I mean, that looked a different side out there last night to what we saw before Christmas. It's been remarked on before in the Reading game how quiet the team were, and how vocally Reading were a lot more vociferous than QPR. Well, last night that certainly wasn't the case. Charlie Austin's kind of front and centre of that, and it's almost like he's leading from the front. Literally and spiritually, I guess, in some ways. And it's kind of everyone else is sort of buying into that as well. And you're seeing, Jeff Cameron's come out with Shelmore, the Dickies and, the verbals on the field. And sometimes, it's not in any FA coaching manual, but sometimes you just got to win nasty. And, they did that last night, and they also did that against Blackburn as well, which I guess is a step forward for this team.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like you said, because we kind of touched on it last week as well. Like obviously, like the wins last year were kind of they were high-scoring wins. Like it was more about outscoring the opponent. But the wins they've got this season are much more about staying solid and being organised, and I guess winning ugly, if you could say that. I mean, it might be kind of harsh on the performance because they did play really well second half, but it's still, yeah, they definitely have sort of changed their style a bit, I think, this season. Ben, you must have been really pleased with that. A diehard Rangers fan for many years. What do you think about the rest of the season? Are you feeling confident for the top half and maybe for the playoffs, or are you staying your usual level-headed self and staying in the moment?
Well, two things really, Dan. I mean, the first is, as Kevin and Ian have just said, it becomes the result of the season to beat the second place team, and also beating your local rivals. I think is just something that gives everyone a lift. It makes players, fans, everyone feel good about the club. You know, that's the effect it has, and that's why it's so important. I mean, I was reminded, you know, thinking of it of 20 odd years ago when Rangers beat Chelsea for the first time in a long while. Some fella called Gallen scored the only goal, actually, as I recall. Yeah, and I just remember being on an absolute high for the rest of that week. It was fantastic. So you can't really underestimate that. If you look at the rest of the season, and I know your tweet was perhaps a little bit tongue-in-cheek, Dan, about the playoffs. You know, I think we've got to do the maths. Do the maths here. To get in the playoffs, you're going to need a points total of at least low 70s. So Rangers on 36 at the moment, I think. So basically, they would have to double what they've got now in the rest of the season. You've got to say that's a very tall order. You know, being perfectly honest, they'd have to go on a hell of a run. So I think it is important fans keep their feet on the ground, because any thought of getting in the playoffs is highly, highly unlikely. But as everyone's, I think, already agreed, if the team could get into the top 10, even into the top half, that represents progress on last season. And that's what you're always looking to do, isn't it? Is improve year on year. And I think that certainly is realistic, particularly again if you look at the league table, and there's, I think, a bit of a gap between sixth and the rest at the moment. So there's almost scope to say. I think it may even be, have to check the table. I think Cardiff have actually gone up to 7th place since Mick McCarthy came in, and yet before that they were pretty much where Rangers have been. So it's definitely possible to make that charge and perhaps be the best of the rest. But I think getting in the top 6, that's, you know, miracles aside, that one's not going to happen, I've got to say.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it's they've obviously been on a great run, but you think at some point they'll hit a difficult spell again, whether it's like 4 or 5 games, you know, 6 games where they don't pick up that many points. It normally happens in a season. You know, if they carried on this run of form that they're on at the moment, they'd probably get in there. But I think that would be a big ask. I don't think they're going to, you know, win almost every game until the end of the season. You know, I think they probably will hit a dip at some point. But for now, it's looking really positive, and it's looking positive as well because of the kind of young players that they've got in the club. You know, they've sort of looked towards the future now with some of their signings. They've got young players, you know, like Chris Willock, Rob Dickey's still quite a young defender. Senny Dieng, obviously in goal, I think he's 26, but he's, for a keeper, that's still pretty young. Do you kind of think, Kev, that they're building a real kind of core that can challenge for the playoffs next season with the young players that they've got at the club?
Well, if I'm going to be brutally honest, if we didn't have the signings of Charlie Austin and Johansson, but especially Charlie Austin, we wouldn't be talking like this. We'd be looking over our shoulders. That's the effect and the impact he's had, not just on the team, but with the fans and in general. And that, I didn't think Charlie Austin played particularly well last night, but he ends up scoring the vital winning goal, and he's a hero. And that is what he's there for. In the box, he comes alive, and he can get you wins and get you 3 points. Regarding what you said about building with the younger players, I'm not too sure. I wouldn't go that far. Depends on what happens in the summer. If Charlie stays and they get some good signings in, and we've talked about the fullback positions that need strengthening, then I'll judge it in the summer when the squad is. But what I would say, and I was thinking, is like QPR have I'm going to have a little go at the owners here. Not the owners, but they've done well in the January transfer window and put the money up. Can't we put the money up in the summer? And then, do you know what I mean? And go for it in the summer instead of, oh, we're under a bit of pressure here, we need to do something quick. That's what I would like to see. Go for it a little bit in the summer and then don't panic in the January transfer window.
I think you're spot on there. Like, obviously these young players, they've got a lot of potential and they've shown really good spell. Like when Willock came on against Brentford, he looked really good. Rob Dickey's had some really good games this season, so they're definitely like developing as a squad. But like you say, I think without those signings of like Johansson and Charlie Austin, those young guys on their own maybe were enough to keep them in the division. But they were, it's those additions really that have come in and made all the difference. But I suppose if these young lads can keep developing, and then like you say, hopefully in the summer they add to it with some good players, whether they can keep Austin at the club. Sam Fieldy had a good impact yesterday. Is another young lad who might stay. But yes, I suppose it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because like I said, they've got these guys in purely because they were in trouble, and they've nailed it because they have got them out of trouble so far. And Johansson looks a really good player in the centre midfield. Obviously, Charlie Austin, you know what you're going to get with him. He's always going to score goals. He scored 3 already this season, or since he's come back to QPR. But they've I think they have sort of changed their transfer policy a little bit. Obviously, it's not hard to change from when they're in the Premier League and when they were just throwing money at whatever experienced guy could come in and possibly help them. But I mean, Ian, do you feel like they are developing into a better team with these young guys? And are you kind of pleased that they've got these young lads in to try and change their sort of philosophy a little bit?
I think what's mildly encouraging is, I mean, you look at what Brentford have done. I mean, let's be honest about it. Brentford were outstanding for 45 minutes last night, and Rico Henry, what a really good player he is. I mean, I think he'll be an England player. I'm assuming he is English, but but
I believe so.
He schooled Todd Kane in that first 45 minutes. Going forward, he couldn't get past him, and when he's running at him, he couldn't defend him. But guys like that, they've signed sort of 3-4 years ago that have developed through Brentford and got better. If Rangers can start doing, I mean, Bright Samuel's gone, but Chris Willock seems to have improved in that time since Bright Samuel's gone. Almost like, right, this is my chance. And again, he came off the bench last night and played a major role in that victory last night, as he did at Watford. So you look at someone like that who's developing. Dickey's got better. Dieng's got better. I believe a deal is in place to keep Field in the summer if they want him. So from what I saw last night, it's a small sample size. He looks a good player. So then you've got Luke Amos coming back. So they've got some good young players there. But, as Kev rightly says, you need that experience around them. I don't think they'll be able to afford to get Johansson. I think he's got another year still at Fulham, and I believe he's on huge money. So whether they can get him. If they try and keep Austin, again, he's on massive money. I don't know whether or not what it would take to kind of keep him. Would you want him full-time on the books? I don't know. Is it financially feasible? So there's still questions to be asked, but I certainly think they're going in the right direction more than they were sort of 2 years ago when, we had people like Joel Lynch and, Pavel Shoek, these kind of players, I feel a little bit more confident, the last sort of 18 months than I have done, for a long time about QPR. But, there's lots of questions still to be answered. Who will be manager? What are they going to sign? How much will they spend? So yeah, at the moment it's a chance to enjoy the win. But I mean, talk of playoffs is ridiculous. And but next year you just got to build, haven't you? It's boring, but you have to build. It's taken Brentford 6-7 years to get where they are, and they probably will go up. It was a great win last night, and bragging rights, etc. But they're a fair side. They're a very good side. And, really, as much as it hates to say it, QPR have got to look at it and go, well, that's what QPR need to be. You need to do what they've done and become a force in a division and then talk about going up.
Sorry, Ben, do you have something to say?
I'll tell you the one thing. I mean, I agree with what Ian said about Brentford. The one thing I wouldn't want to see QPR copy is, and this was quite controversial at the time when Brentford scrapped their youth team, scrapped their academy, went to a B team system. And they will say, well, that's worked for them. But what I would say is it has closed off a route for local homegrown players, if you like. You look at the players that are coming through at Brentford, and they are all, they are all players who've been, if you like, sourced from overseas. Now that's fine to an extent, but I would say if you style yourself as a community club, and you see yourself in that way, there's got to be that pathway for the kids that are kicking the ball around White City Estate, you know, to make it. And that's something personally I wouldn't want to see QPR go down that road. But just picking up on something else you mentioned, I mean, Chris Willock is someone we've talked about, and I think the conundrum, if you like, is how do you get Willock into the starting 11, because he keeps having this impact off the bench and looking really good, and it's actually hard to see at the moment. How do you get him into that starting 11 unless you're going to drop Chair for a game, unless you're going to try and get Willock playing maybe as a second striker or off Austin? I don't know. Interested to know what everyone feels about where does Willock fit in, and how do they give him a greater role, if you like.
And just before I answer that question, and you're saying about the Brentford and you know, they went down the B team route, but QPR's sort of best player and players have come from that sort of system. We took Eze, was released by Millwall. So that's what sort of Brentford are doing, taking players from Chelsea. And that. Ilias Chair's come from another club. We've signed Rob Dickey. We signed Willock, really, an Arsenal Academy graduate. So we're sort of, the way Brentford are doing it, we're doing it, but we still got our academy. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you look at,
yeah, that's a very fair point. Yeah,
he was come from America. Seni Dieng. I mean, who else is there? I mean, there's a few. So I know what you're saying, because I would never come for a QPR. So do you understand? If we didn't have an academy or a youth team or whatever in those days it was called, I wouldn't have come through. So I agree with you that I don't want to see that scrapped. But then I have to say the way QPR have got players in the team, young players in the team, is not from coming through the whole ranks. It's basically coming through players that have been let go by other clubs.
What do you think, Kev, about as well what Ben said about Chris Willock? Like, he's had a really good impact on the team. Do you think they need to try and find a way to get him into the 11? Obviously, because without playing with wingers, that's his natural position. You're gonna have to put him out of position. I don't think he can play wing back, but could you see him as like maybe playing up front?
It's difficult because the change of a system has, you know, impacted him, and I'd say Albert Adoma as well, another winger who's at the club. We're not playing with wingers. We've got wing backs. Whether Willock can play wing back, I'm not too sure, because at some stage in the game you have to do some defending, and the wing backs at the moment are better defenders than him, but maybe not as much going forward. Chris Willock, maybe, you know, he's knocking on the door, like we said, he's coming on, but it's very difficult for the manager now to change the sort of the team. I know he did it, and I was very surprised when he did it against Blackburn, when he dropped Macaulay Bonne and brought Lyndon Dykes back in. Now, I didn't particularly think Lyndon Dykes played very well last night, so maybe partnering him up front with Charlie, I'm not too sure, because what Lyndon Dykes does, and we've talked about it, he's not great in yet, but he has got a little bit of a physical presence, and for set pieces defending. So it's a very difficult situation for Callum Willock to actually get a starting berth. The best thing I'd say was if they give Ilias Chair a rest for a game and he comes in and see what he does in that position, which I think could suit him a little bit as well. But it's a very difficult situation for the manager. And at the moment, if I was the manager, I wouldn't be changing the team, because he's coming on a sub and making such a good impact. And sometimes you're only as good as your subs, and he can look around and see Willock there, and he thinks, I could bring him on and change the game. So I think it's, I don't see him starting unless there's an injury or a loss of form to Ilias Chair or someone like that, or we go on a bad run of results. So I think he's got to bide his time at the moment.
Yeah, Dykes is really struggling for me. I think I could see why I played him last night, because, you know, it's almost like Charlie's a goal scorer, but he's not going to run the lines for you. He's not the most mobile. So almost Dykes does his running, so to speak, but he's just not. Brentford dealt with him so comfortably. He's not impacting. He's not hurting other teams at all. He really isn't.
I think he needs to be taken out
and
for a bit. He just, honestly, I I agree with you, and you were there, I presume. Is that right?
Yeah.
You can see it better when you're live, but I thought, you know, just his all-round game was poor. I'll give him one thing: he has a go and he runs about, but his all-round game was poor, and I think he needs to be taken out. Maybe someone else. I
mean, Bon had a knock last night, so he wasn't on the bench. So I do wonder if he had been fit, whether he would have started, given that Dykes has been out with this problem. So
against Watford, and then, you know, it's very difficult. The manager changed the winning team against Blackburn and set himself up for a bit of criticism, but we won that game, and Lyndon Dykes replaced him. So I don't know. He seems to be in favour ahead of Bond at the moment.
It's funny. I was talking to a Peterborough mate of mine. He's a fan of Peterborough the other day, and he said Tony 3 years ago was where Dykes is now. So, mate, is it a case of just he can improve and get there? It's just inexperience, and he needs to learn the game more, Kev? Or do you think?
Well, I heard the manager said that he'd never had an academy or whatever training, so he said he's sort of playing catch up. So look, physically, I think he's got good mobility. He's tall. I just think I think there's a lack of confidence, and I just think take him out for a few games, sort of let him rebuild himself in training. You know, go with someone, shooting practices, and then come back stronger. I don't think there would be any harm in him just missing a couple of games and then have a little rest and then coming back a bit fresher.
Did you ever a moment in your career, Kev, where you just were out of form and you just were short of confidence? And what?
Too many times, Ian.
Well, what do you do as a striker, though? Do you kind of what's the kind of the recipe to kind of? Is it just working out, or
really, I think it's just work extra harder in training. Go to the coaches and ask for extra training and shooting and stuff, and just general forward play. Hopefully there's someone at the club who can put their arm around him and give him some advice and some confidence. But yeah, it's difficult. Strikers is a tough position, because if you could play really well for games on games and games and not score, and you're losing confidence because you're judged on your goals. Where Charlie's the opposite. He doesn't really play well, but he'll come up with a goal. And he's the hero, and he's brilliant at it. So I do feel for him. I do feel he needs a little rest. Give McCullough, Bon, even Kelman, or even play Willock, as you say, as we said, play him off Charlie. But the only thing I don't think he's got the running ability of a McCullough, Bon, or a Lyndon Dykes.
I just want to as well bring it back to what we were talking about earlier as well. With those obviously young guys coming in, and like you said, Kev, about needing the experienced guys and the good players to complement them as well. But I mean, I think the big thing for me is like it's kind of similar to what last season was. It's like they had Naki Wells on loan, they had Jordan Hugel on loan, and they were scoring the goals for the team. And then you look now, obviously they've got Charlie Austin on loan, and they've got Stephanie Hansen on loan, who have come in and had such a good impact and have really improved the team. It's kind of almost like they're going to lose those guys in the summer again, and they'll be in the same situation where the squad they've got isn't quite good enough for what they want to achieve, and they've not got the other guys to come in and complement them and improve the team. And I suppose that comes back to as well what you said, Kev, about the summer really being the big transfer window. And while January is good to get the players in you need, if you're in trouble or you need a little bit of a boost to get in the playoffs, whatever, you can get maybe that little bit in, but the summer really is an important transfer window. I was wondering your kind of thoughts on that as well, Ben.
Well, I think, first and foremost, you've got to look at what's in front of you. And the key in January was getting the right players in to get the team away from the bottom end of the Championship. And I think we all agree they've done that. They've been successful in that way. But I suppose there are other factors might come into play as well in the summer, because there are players who are there who may be coming to the end of their contracts, maybe are not going to be staying on. So then you've freed up wages potentially to bring someone else in. I mean, I think really, just adopting that cliche again, you can't look too far ahead maybe at next season at this stage. You just got to be looking at the here and now. And I think, yeah, we have to give the club credit for the business they did in January, which, you know, arguably was the best they've done transfer-wise for a very long time. You know, I think one thing I'll pick up on as well, which, you know, Kev is talking about what you do as a striker when you're out of form and things aren't going your way. I would have thought someone like Charlie Austin potentially could really be almost a mentor for Dykes at the moment. Someone who's got the experience and, as you say, can have a very ordinary game but will come up with a goal at the end of it. Do you think there's scope maybe for just a bit of mentoring for Dykes, certainly for the rest of this season?
I think, yeah, I totally agree. I'm sure Charlie will be talking to him at the training, during the match. I mean, you need that when you're feeling maybe no confidence. You need that experienced person and to talk to, even just to guide you through matches as well. And Ian said that he from the big change of how more vocal the QPR players, and I think they said it on the I think Nick London, Andy Sinton said it on the TV when I was watching it last night, how better and louder QPR players were during the game than maybe before Christmas. So I'm sure Charlie Austin's talking to Lyndon Dykes. I'm sure Les Ferdinand's talking to Lyndon Dykes. I'm sure Mark Warburton and the coaching staff are talking to Lyndon Dykes. I just feel maybe a couple of games just to reset, little rest, take the pressure off you, and then go again. That's what I believe would be the best thing for him at the moment. But then if Macaulay Bonnett's injured, then he's just sort of keep going. And then one might just come off his knee and then you're up and running. It's one of those, it's a balance in which one do you do? Do you take him out? Would you keep going and put him in the fire line and he nicks a goal and then he's buzzing again? Because once just one goes in, it doesn't even matter how it goes in, off your bum, your knee, your head, or 30-yarder, a goal's a goal, and you're absolutely on top of the world. So.
Yeah, so obviously another tough game as well coming up next for QPR. I've got to play another promotion chasing team in Bournemouth, who are sort of without a manager. Obviously, Jonathan Woodgate's taking charge at the moment. A few rumours flying around about Thierry Henry maybe getting the Bournemouth job. So I think it'd probably be a busy press box if Thierry Henry gets announced before the game against QPR. Ian, what's your prediction for this one? Obviously, QPR on a great run, but Bournemouth, you look at their squad, it's good enough to get promoted, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought at the start of the season they'd walk away with the division, the players they had and the way they play, but it's been hard for them. I mean, they got Jack Wilshere playing for him. I'm a huge Jack Wilshere fan. I think he's at his peak. He was a tremendous player. You know, he scored the other day, but I'm not sure how he's playing for Bournemouth and what he's doing. But they've got a lot of talent in that side. It'd be interesting to see how Rangers come down from this game. It's a tough game last night. A lot of emotion, a lot of energy. You know, are they going to be recovered in time to raise it again against Bournemouth? You know, I think the way the Bournemouth play suits Rangers as well. You know, pass inside, so that might play into their hands. But yeah, I think why not? They should have won at Dean Court early in the season. So I'm going to get them to nick it 1-0.
Confident. What about you, Ben? You share Ian's optimism?
Well, I think Ian's been the killjoy in the past, so maybe I'm going to take that role this time. And it is partly because Rangers are coming off the back of a great result, and we all know what tends to happen in the next game. It's usually a come down to earth with a bang. I mean, Bournemouth, one thing I've noticed, certainly since Jonathan Woodgate has taken over, is they've stopped conceding goals. They've really tightened up, which you would, I suppose, expect from someone who was a top-class defender in his playing days. Yeah, I think it looks a very difficult game. You know, put it this way, I would be quite happy if it finishes in another draw, and so that's what I'll go for. I'll go for a 1-1.
You always go for 1-1.
But I'm often right.
I was debating who to choose first, whether to go for Kev or Ben, because I thought one of them's going to copy the other.
He's copied me. He's read my mind.
Yeah.
I was going to say 1-1, but now I'm not. I'm going to go 2-1 QPR.
Yeah, well, I'm actually going to copy Ben. I'm actually going to say 1-1 as well. I think a draw will be probably be the result. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. We'll be back again soon.